Can we get just a little, I'm talking just a scotch round of applause for Kyle Shanahan, who is right now riding the second longest regular season winning streak in 49ers franchise history. Like, there's just not enough being made about that. There really isn't. There really isn't. And I feel like one of the reasons why we don't make a big deal out of that is because there's always some asshole in the back of the bar who wants to say, yeah, but he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. Okay, first of all, thanks for introducing new information. We were all quite aware of that. But if all you understand is that the guy who won the Super Bowl good, everyone who didn't bad, you don't understand anything. What Kyle Shanahan is doing is quite remarkable. Since 2019, he's got a 46-24 record, and the 49ers have the fourth most wins in the NFL, and that comes with an injury-riddled 6-10 2020 season where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I mean, you eliminate the first 2 years of the total rebuild that Kyle had to go through, his winning percentage is really good. Remember, he's in season number 7. He started 10-22. His coaching tenure started 10-22 in his first 2 seasons. And even though he's only in season number 7, again, this isn't a number that is a huge brag about it number, but I think it's pretty interesting to note that in Kyle's short amount of time, as behind as he was the night he took the job, having to do a full roster rebuild over the first 2 years of his coaching tenure, Kyle Shanahan is already somehow the 90th winningest head coach in NFL history. He's already in the top 100 in wins in the history of this league. As a matter of fact, just to throw out some names that a lot of people got respect for, do you realize that Kyle Shanahan has already got more wins as a head coach in the NFL than Art Shell, than Buddy Ryan, than Herm Edwards, than Mike Martz, than Bill O'Brien, than Mike Vrabel? You know, some of those guys have Lombardi trophies, and Shanahan's already got more wins than them. He is a significant entity in the coaching world that gets dismissed because he hasn't grabbed the brass ring that is the Lombardi trophy. But then again, the people that are doing that, I'm here to tell you, are immature, they're not students of history, and they don't know what they're talking about. Kyle is really, really good at this. And again, but he has not won a Super Bowl crowd. Let's explain how rare and how small of a crowd that really is. I did a little research last night, and, research, it's a fancy way of saying I Googled something. But, I did. I went over a little history because this is where my idea for a little Kyle Shanahan Appreciation Day really started to take root. Do you realize that in the history of the planet, which planet? I'm glad you asked. This one, this planet, planet Earth. In the history of planet Earth, only 35 men have won Super Bowls as NFL head coaches. Only 35 head coaches have won Super Bowls in the history of the planet. And at the risk of sounding crass, 9 of them are dead. 9 of those guys are now dead. That means we only have 26 living men who have won Super Bowls as NFL head coaches. That's a really small group. 26 people is not a lot of people. So it's hard to be in that group even when everything is going right. It's really hard to be in that group. Now, Kyle, again, hasn't won a Super Bowl, but you know what he has done? He's picked up 6 playoff wins in this league already. And that's an impressive total, whether you want to admit to it or not. Again, this is one of those, your opinion can't trump the matter of fact, that it's hard to win in a career 6 playoff games, much less 6 playoff games before you even enter year number 7 as a head coach. Kyle's keeping some pretty good company with those 6 playoff wins. You also know who's got 6 playoff wins exactly in their head coaching careers? George Halas, Papa Bear. George Halas has 6 playoff wins. Mike Ditka has 6 playoff wins. Bruce Arenas has 6 playoff wins. Dick Vermeil has 6 playoff wins. And Kyle is tied with them already as he enters now year number 7. This is a guy who turns 44 in December. That's it. Kyle's only 44 years old in December. His dad coached until he was 61 years old. So look, I don't know where Kyle gets off the train. You know, coaches make so much more money now than they did then. Maybe Kyle's not looking at this as I'm going to also coach into my early 60s just like my dad did. So maybe that's the way he's thinking. Or maybe he's thinking, I'm going to coach longer than my dad ever did. And this is the family business, and I'm obsessed with football, and I'm never happy sitting at home. So I got to be a football coach. It's just in my DNA. But let's just assume for a moment that Kyle coaches at least as long as his dad. So Kyle is going to coach until he is 61 years old. That means he's got 17 more seasons. 17 more seasons to be an NFL head coach. Would you assume that if Kyle Shanahan coached 17 more years, whether it was for the 49ers or not, but he's just an NFL head coach for 17 more years, would you assume that Kyle would, at that point in time, having coached 17 more years, win at least 4 more playoff games? Now, let's just get, grandiose and say the Niners are going to win the Super Bowl this year. That means Kyle's going to win 3 playoff games. He's going to win the divisional, the conference championship game, and the Super Bowl. So that's 3 playoff wins right there. So if the 49ers were to win the Super Bowl this year, Kyle then needs just 1 more playoff win in the next 17 seasons, if he coaches until he's 61 like his dad, to join the 10-win club of postseason head coaching wins. There are only 18 NFL coaches that have ever won double-digit playoff games. Kyle is 4 away from joining that club, and 15 of those 18 men, by the way, if Kyle doesn't win the Super Bowl this year, let me just let you know, on his way to 10 playoff wins, which I think is very doable if he were to really coach 17 more years, 15 of the 18 men in the I've won at least 10 playoff games in my head coaching career have Super Bowl rings. The only 3 who don't are Dan Reeves, Marv Levy, and Bud Grant. And I'm going to tell you right now, Dan Reeves, Marv Levy, and Bud Grant are on the very top of the great coaches who've never won Super Bowl line. That's who they are. Marv Levy didn't win a Super Bowl. What do you have to say about Marv Levy other than he's one of the greatest coaches in football history, for God's sakes? He got to 4 Super Bowls in a row. Yesterday, we're talking about appreciating consistency. Appreciate that. Marv Levy turned into a joke. There's no joke in Marv Levy's career. The guy was fantastic. So, again, if all you understand about the race is who broke the finish line first, you really don't know anything about racing, do you? Let me just wrap up the Kyle Shanahan Appreciation Day segment with one question. This is a question to ask those who want to tell you what Kyle Shanahan isn't or hasn't done, in comparison to the only way to identify a good coach is with the Lombardi Trophy. Let me just ask you this. You have to sign up for a football game that will determine whether or not your favorite pet lives or dies. Your team wins the game, your favorite pet lives. Your team loses the game, your favorite pet has its head cut off right in front of you. Now, you only get to choose one head coach from the Sunday night football game that's about to be played down at Levi's Stadium. For a game with your pet's life riding on it, who are you going to pick? Kyle Shanahan or Mike McCarthy? Now, I can't hear you. I can't open up phone lines. I could go ahead and look at the chat right here. I'm guessing an awful lot of people are saying, well, I would take Kyle Shanahan. I'll take Kyle Shanahan. People who don't like Kyle Shanahan might take Kyle Shanahan in the terms of who would you rather have, Kyle Shanahan or Mike McCarthy? After all, Kyle Shanahan has knocked Mike McCarthy's Dallas Cowboys out of the playoffs 2 years in a row. Who are you going to choose to coach that game with your pet's life riding on it? Well, if you said Kyle Shanahan, what you just admitted is that you're going to take the coach without the Lombardi trophy over the coach who's got one. Kevin McCarthy's got a Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan doesn't. I think all of you would take Kyle Shanahan in that game. So obviously, when it comes to coaching acumen, the Super Bowl is not the only way to go about judging it. And if you want to use that as your only way to go about judging it, you're the wrong judge for this case.